So welcome back from last week, and we're going to jumpstart the completion of our second module, including our solution. We'll be reviewing the criteria for our solution today. I did revise in Blackboard the student learning outcomes that were listed to work some quick edits for clarity and readability. And basically I'll have the final version of your study guide out online by noon today. I've been basically pushing through that. So essentially what we see is, hang on just a second. Can everyone still see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so what we have is a case where we're going to review the basics again, just to refresh the trail, and then put that into the context of what's required for the solution. And basically, I'm updating the related resources inside the Module 2 folders. So if you click into here into references, in addition to the final version of our study guide, I'm going to update a matrix of tools. So, this is all about tools and methods. And the important thing to understand is that your selection of tools and methods is based on the forensic scenario. So that requires a grasp of the operational context. You may select a tool based on the stage of forensic work that you need to perform. We know that there are three basic stages: acquisition, and then analysis, and then reporting. And so a tool may be selected because of the stage of work you're doing. It may also be selected because of the context. If you're working with a technically savvy malicious actor, they may be doing some network reconnaissance, they may be covering their tracks, and so there's activities. There's 5 stages of malicious activity that are usually performed. We call those tactics, techniques, and procedures that are performed by technical perpetrators and malicious actors, people who are trying to cover their tracks in the aftermath of a crime. So they're doing things with digital information. It's not actually the criminal act itself, but related to the criminal act. So it's part of the evidence that's needed in that situation. So what I'd like to do, though, is start off. Okay, we have one more person here that's joined us. Alrighty. So we'll just take one more snapshot here of our attendance. It's really important that whether you're a digital evidence first responder and you're first on the scene and your primary focus is to, preserve the evidence, to take action, to preserve the evidence, and to prevent its destruction, right? So first responders want to make sure people don't do anything that's an issue. I'm sorry, I need to ask everybody to hold for just one more second, please. So whether you're a first responder and your goal is to prevent the accidental or intentional destruction of digital evidence, or it's a digital evidence specialist, and your goal is to systematically acquire the evidence for analysis and reporting. You you have two basic things you need to be able to do. There are two basic activities that you need to be able to perform, and I don't know if we called these out intentionally at this point, but I want to make sure I cover it here. Basically, every forensic professional needs to be able to view digital resources and detect changes. At its most basic level, when you're talking about the core of activity that digital forensics professionals perform, what's central to their capabilities is their capacity to view digital resources and to detect changes to digital resources. And that's where some of the additional context comes into play. You may recall last week and in earlier discussions of context, we talked about the security account management and the model that's common. Does everybody remember this discussion?
Yes.
We talked about scenarios where you're called onto the scene to investigate, and you have to, as a part of the context, the scenario, situational awareness, you have to understand which model of security account management is in play. And, so you have this local security account management model where it's kind of work group mode. All of the security accounts are locally stored on each machine. And then you have a centralized or corporate or business grade enterprise. We'd call this a domain or a realm, where the security accounts, the login accounts and passwords are all stored on a central server. And there are profound implications for this model. To begin with, there are tools for centralized management, and there are dependencies. So when we talk about the tools for centralized management, what we're saying is that in a business or corporate grade environment, mid-size and larger organizations, government agencies, nonprofit organizations, where there's a dozen or more people, there's often the use of something called a group policy object, where the technical staff apply a group policy object which enforces behavior on each of the clients or user accounts, right? And if you come into the scene and you're not even aware of what a group policy object is, more importantly, there are dependencies. So in an enterprise environment, you have services like DNS and time synchronization that can create profound dysfunctions, and it'll mimic like a malicious attack. Things will just quit working, access for large numbers of people will stop. They'll call you onto the scene and they'll say, hey, something's wrong, something's off. And it could be as simple as, the time synchronization is off for the two domain controllers. So half the time people are being denied access to their resources. Or in the case of a group policy object, there can be cases where the group policy object, and this is something that we explain in more detail in the study guide, but we have domain name system dependencies, and then we have these group policy objects, which are systems policy rules. The important thing to understand is that a group policy object in a domain security account management model or scenario when the IT, the technical people say, hey, we use automatic updating. We don't depend on people to manually do this, where they have to pull this up, and we're going to depend on our users to go ahead and then manually update every so often. Oh, see, here's one that was missed, right? An optional quality update for March 2021. It was not yet downloaded and installed, right? There could be a group policy object that enforces that local updates occur with a server nearby instead of going out on the internet. So there's something called Windows Software Update Services. It's a server. And once you have 2 or 3 dozen systems, if you run that system in your local network environment, the updates that normally take, I don't know, an hour at a time for individuals with passable internet service at their house, right? They click on this and it takes a while to load. It happens in 5 minutes flat. It happens 100 times faster. And so that's an example of a group policy object. When the DNS or the group policy object, the time synchronization for the security principles in this enterprise environment get out of joint, it's not uncommon for the IT staff to lack basic understanding for how those symptoms present in the local environment. And a forensic specialist will be called onto the scene. It's like, yeah, we got to make sure that things are okay, because, you know, stuff is just not working. Half the stuff in here, it's just flaking out, you know, and it's often an issue that has more to do with the IT infrastructure and how it's set up. This is also a huge component of this. This is one of the things that's really significant about the SAM. Has anyone ever heard of the term SEIM? S-E-I-M.
Could you repeat the question?
Has anyone ever heard of the term SEIM? S-E-I-M.
No.
Okay. Whoops. So a SEIM is System Event Integration Management. In a corporate or enterprise environment, the system logs, so if you go into computer management here, in standalone or workgroup situations, when you're doing forensics and you're trying to figure out what's going on, one of the things you want to capture are system logs. In particular, Windows logs. There's a system log that traps events like failed login attempts, right? And security. Who's changing passwords? Who's changing permissions on files and folders? This kind of thing is, you know, an audit failure is an event where something was supposed to happen and it didn't happen correctly. So failed login is an audit. It's not an audit failure, it's a login failure, but an audit failure is when you're trying to log changes to something and it's not properly trapped. So basically the system logs, the security logs, the application logs, those are all stored locally, except in this kind of environment. So here you are, a forensic investigator, you appear on the scene, there's a tech department, it's a mid-sized to larger organization, and you need to gather up the logs. And if you have a domain environment, it's a pretty strong possibility that the logs for each of the separate machines are integrated and collected centrally. They're stored on a logging server. So updates are automated on a central server. Logs for all of the different systems are stored on a different server. What's even more important to understand in terms of the context of this environment is the use of live tools. When you have enterprise environments, you also have, because of these automated logs, when you turn up a Kali Linux tool to start analyzing and capturing data for forensic purposes, it's going to trigger alarms on that integrated system. So you need to clear the use of live Kali forensic tools or any other forensic tools, any other type of forensic tools in advance with the tech folks. So what's implied by this security account management model is that if you're dealing with a corporate domain or enterprise environment, you're going to have support available from the IT shop to change passwords. In the case where you have a live exploit that's playing out on a workstation, and you're going to see this, and you're actually going to perform a solution based on this scenario. So in the next module, you're going to encounter and engage, a live exploit as it's happening on a system. And in a domain environment or enterprise environment, you basically have resources through the IT shop where they can coordinate with you to change passwords so you can gain access to locked screens. You might come upon a machine that's running hot, the fans are blowing hard, the disk activity is going through the roof, the network traffic is phenomenal. There's all this traffic going out of the network. So it's outbound traffic and it's huge. So it looks like somebody's exfiltrating data. They're compromising the institution's data by forklifting all of the sensitive digital information out of that system, and they're capturing that so they can read it, so they can analyze it, so they can break the encryption, so they can get into sensitive details that they're not legally authorized to access, right? So compromising. That's what happened. It's what happens constantly. A lot of times people don't know they've been digitally compromised, because if an attacker can just get a copy of everything and take it out to their system and then pick away at it, they're not live on your system. They're not exposed. They won't go to jail. The goal is to get on there quick and then transmit in volume all of the sensitive data out of there, and then they can I don't know, take a coffee break and celebrate, have a keg party, and then pick away at all of your company secrets, or figure out how to extort people because they have sensitive information that they're embarrassed about, right? So there's all sorts of things that play out in these types of scenarios. In the next module, you'll encounter a case where you have a live workstation. It's been locked by the employee who's away on a conference, at a conference. And so the machine was left running and the screen was locked with a password. And there's serious issues that need to be investigated. And basically you have support. In this environment, you can go to the IT shop and say, hey, Renell is away at the conference, and I need to get on his screen to capture the images of the active applications running on his system, because we want to see what's active, what's causing all of that network traffic. So we're not interested in powering off the system. That would destroy live evidence. We want to analyze the contents of RAM. We think there's malware on there because there's very plain evidence that there's some encryption, some ransomware. So some of the data is getting encrypted. We're concerned about that. We want to see what's going on in that live system. In a corporate enterprise environment with a domain, the IT shop can basically change the password for Renell on the fly And that change takes effect instantaneously. So if Rennell is the perpetrator, he can't get back on his system to stop or change things. He's locked out. You have access to get on the screens, to capture the live RAM, to secure images of the running applications, all the different things that are running on the system tray. You can basically click on each one to display the screen, and as long as you don't click on anything or change anything, you know, you can capture digital images of each of those running windows, right? You can basically capture digital information that has not, the system data hasn't been modified because you're not running new software. You're just viewing what's already running. Does that make sense? Let's contrast that with the workgroup or standalone model. If you need to get on a system that's live and locked by Rennell, but Rennell is the only administrator for that system, well, you're going to have to use different options. You're not going to be able to do the same things. You're limited. So if you have a workgroup or standalone system with an individual or local SAM, right, on that system, you don't have the same options when it comes to live analysis. Unless Rennell is working with you because he thinks one of the other users on his system is doing something. You know, maybe Rennell is a partner in a small law firm and he thinks that Jesus is good. Jesus is going to be out to betray the partnership, right? And so he calls you in there. You're more limited because you know, you don't have an IT shop to work with to coordinate things. You really have the owner of the system, and if they're not technically savvy, if they don't know what to do, you're going to have to coach them on what to do, because otherwise you're going to lose the information. If Jesus happens to be accessing information on Rennell's PC actively in real time, and Rennell wants to catch that, you're going to have to coordinate directly with Rennell, and he's going to have to know what to do to get around on that system, or you will have to coach him, right? So there's a lot that's implicated in a forensic scenario in terms of context between the two models for account management, local and domain. You have additional support that's possible in a domain environment. You have collected logs that are centralized. And so you're going to want to have those conversations with people and say, I want a copy of the collected logs. I want to see if there's a pattern out here, not just this system, not just Rennell's, but I want to see if there's other events on Kana's and Rhonda's system that are similar. We want to make sure this isn't spreading, whatever it is, right? And then you have this use of live tools, right? You plug in a Kali Linux thumb drive to start using your tools. And in this environment, all sorts of weird things start to happen. The group policy objects that restrict certain activities start to fire off. And then there are alarms that go off. And it's important for you to understand this as a part of the operational context, the situational awareness. The important thing I want you to know is that dysfunctions of the domain environment can mimic malicious artifacts. And it's your due diligence and situational awareness that will preserve your own credibility as a forensic professional, right? So all of this has to be taken into account before we even start talking about the tools. But at this point, I'd like to start talking about the tools. Are there any questions about the implications and dependencies on the security account management for a given scenario?
No questions.
Okay. All right, we can always circle back around. I've already created, so for your, I think what we want to do is come back a bit. What is it that's due between now and the 31st of March? So we need to make sure if we're going to stay on track for our timeline in the course that we finish the second module and the midterm before the end of the month. And we've had some technical issues. We've had some delays on that level. But if we look at the calendar, we're here on the 23rd and we have until the 31st of March. This module is really a large module. There's a lot of content. In that regard, it can be considered a double module. I mean, we could take the content in module 2 and split it in half and have two smaller modules, really, right? One that has to do with the situational awareness and scenario and considerations for staging the investigation, and then the other one that has to do with the tools and, you know, which tools are good for which purposes, and preparing a set of tools and getting ready for an investigation. We could almost break this into two separate, because what we've chosen to do is embed which tool is used or method is used based on the situation. So we've kind of combined this. What I'm telling you is your assessment by the end of this week, Saturday, 11:59 p.m., it's going to be a 10-point assessment. It'll be worth twice what the average module assessment will be worth. Are there any questions about that?
No.
Okay.
Everything that will be on this test is included in the study guide, right?
Yes. Yes, largely so. And if it isn't in the study guide, it would be on the slides, it would be on the other reference materials, or it might be part of the, you know, the stuff that's in the resources folder. So I've told you before, and this happened recently, where, and I don't know if it was in this class or another class, where we had a question or item on an assessment, and it wasn't technically in the study guide, but it was like on a slide, or it was in one of the other online references. And I used to tell students that they need to know the study guide code, because if it's in the study guide, it's going to be on the assessment one way or the other. But that, I need to be careful and explain that there could be some questions, especially extra credit questions, right? For the related materials, the online references, the solution assignment documents or other assignment documents, where there could be additional questions. If it's not in the resources folder, if a question on the assessment, if a question on the assessment is not in the references folder, because we tell you to memorize everything in the references folder, right? Then it's appropriate for students to say, hey, I want you to consider dropping this question because everybody got it wrong and it wasn't covered by anything, anywhere in any of the references in the reference folder. You know, wasn't in the study guide, wasn't in any of the online references, wasn't on a slide, that kind of thing. That said, you know, this is so the resources folder is designed to supplement references and to supplement what you need to do to finish the assignments and solutions. And if it's in the study guide, there's likely to be a question on, it's almost guaranteed that there's going to be a question on the assessment. If it's not in the study guide, but it's another reference in here, there could be a question about it. Okay. Just a very, and it could be, and most likely it would be, you know, a multiple choice or even an extra credit question. I don't tend to use multi-answer or matching or ordering questions that are worth more when it's not even in the study guide. So I want to assure everybody that, you know, as long as you study what's in the study guide thoroughly, you should be on solid ground to pass without any problems. and then you only get better from there. But I am, in some cases, I am revising previously used questions from other sessions we've had for the same class, and there are cases. So I want to be open for people to challenge and say, you know, would you consider dropping or changing or revising the scoring of that question? I didn't want the recent situation to be to dampen people's enthusiasm or confidence in how we're working here. I hope I've addressed your concerns adequately. Does anyone
Yes,
else? Okay. All right. So yeah, that's why I'm double checking everything in the study guide right now. Right. So we make sure. And the one that's in there right now is in need of an update. The number and order of the learning outcomes and how they're stated are a little different. But if you've been reading and revising, you should, if you've been reading what's in there and keeping up with it, you should be solid and there shouldn't be too many changes. This is an optional assignment. So the first assignment that we have right now, you'll notice a lot of these are deadline 11:59 p.m. Saturday, this Saturday. So part of your solution is to prepare a forensic tool suite. And you can either use a live USB to complete the solution criteria, or you can use a virtual machine. You can create it virtually using a virtual appliance. If you do purchase a USB or you happen to have one extra, and what you basically do is take a picture of a 3.0 16 gig USB, right? And we provide optional credit if you have one. You may not have extra money right now. I know it's tight and everybody is scraping along, and some folks are still affected by COVID and they had a job and don't have a job. And so I know budgets are restricted. If you don't want to do the live USB version of the solution, if you don't want to use the first option for the solution, you don't have to. You can simply use enough drive space on your C drive. So if you have more than 30 gigs of drive space on your C drive, you can use the second option. I have captured video that's going to be pushed out there. I'm going to the office later today to upload videos, but basically I do have a step-by-step on how to create your live Kali USB thumb drive, and then what to do after it's created to submit artifacts that you've gone ahead and here's proof that it works, right? So you're going to create the live Kali USB drive for use with your forensic activities, and then you're going to show that it actually works by firing it up and rebooting your laptop. Okay. I wanted to talk about that for a minute, just to show you. So the first thing you're going to do when you download the Kali Linux live distribution is you're going to use a hashing tool and compare your hash results with the hash results, the hash value provided by Kali. This is something we've talked about and shown people how to do in class. In this case, I'm using hash tool 1.2 instead of the MD5 SHA tool I demonstrated before. This one is a Windows 10 application that doesn't require outdated .NET redistributables. So it's more current, it's accurate. I've validated the tool use I've compared its results to the, other hashing tools. If you have a Mac, you can calculate or generate hash results from the terminal, or there are things in the store, Apple Store, that you can download that don't cost anything, that also do hashing. But that's the first thing you're going to do when you download the live distribution. You're going to take your USB and you're going to run it through with a tool. Let me see here. You're going to put that distribution, the live 64-bit distribution, it's 3.34 gigs large, and you're going to download the tool called Yummy or Yumi, depending on, everybody pronounces it their own way, but Yumi is made by Pendrive Linux, and one of the cool things about Pendrive Linux is that it's a tool used to create live USB distributions. You can put more than one operating system on a single USB. So you could load Kali, you could load Windows 10 and boot into Windows 10 using your thumb drive on an older system just to see if it runs, or you could load other versions of Linux. You could run Ubuntu from here, which is pretty cool. So one of the coolness factors of Yumi is that it's very versatile. And again, the video steps through the process. It takes all of 5 minutes to do this, and we walk through all of that. When you're finished, what's going to happen is that you're going to, for many users that have the latest version of Windows 10 on their laptop, when they try to enter the BIOS, it doesn't give them the option even when they press the key to go in there. This is troublesome for certain brands of laptops, and so I did some troubleshooting ahead of time since last week, just to make sure. If you run into this problem, one of the tricks is to shut down your system with the Kali USB that's been created, plugged in, and press the shift key while you shut down. Just hold it down the whole time it's shutting down. Even after the screen goes black, watch the power light on your laptop, and until the laptop is completely powered off and the light is out, that's when you let up on the shift key. Strangely enough, when you power your laptop back on and then access the key you're supposed to get into BIOS, then it magically works. But I think Windows 10, I think Microsoft added this defense feature to keep people from infecting the UEFI and getting into BIOS. So they don't allow you a quick or easy access into the BIOS again in some cases. If you run into a problem and what I've just described doesn't work, you should contact me so I can help you with it. In most cases, when you press the key to get into the alternate boot options for USB startup, you'll be using F12 or another function key to list the boot devices, and then you select USB. So you're going to see this at that point. A boot menu will show up, and you'll arrow down until you see USB, and then the brand name of your USB drive will show, and that's how you know that's what you're booting from. Sometimes a laptop or a PC doesn't offer a boot option from the menu, and what you have to do instead is press F1 to go into the BIOS setup utility, go into the startup menu, and change the listing within the BIOS in order to boot from the USB. Once you do that, another little trick that's going to happen is that you won't see Kali when it first comes up. Yumi and Pendrive Ultimate consider Kali to be a system tool, and so what you have to do is arrow down. There's a timer that starts ticking down, and if you're distracted, it'll go right back into Windows. It's really frustrating. Then you have to shut down with the shift key again, So again, you want to be on point. You want to be in a quiet place where you're not distracted. You have about 30 seconds, but if you arrow down and select System Tools, that's when Kali appears within the System Tools list. So pendrivelinux.com considers Kali to be a system tool because it's used for, forensic analysis and other diagnostics as well. What happens next is that you're presented with this menu. You want to capture this screen with the third choice selected. Now, what are we saying? You'll discover when you get Kali up on your screen, if you haven't done that already, that Kali can be used for hacking, for really nasty stuff. And so what happens is you can go in with the idea that you're using it for hacking, right? You're not using it for forensics. You're not, it's not a, you might be doing something good with it even if you're hacking. You could be trying to conduct a penetration test as a part of an ethical hacking exercise to probe for defense weaknesses, right? But in our case, what we want to do is select forensics. This screen image is required for your solution submission. So one thing you need to do for your solution is to show this screen where you've selected forensic mode. Now, when you select forensic mode, it locks the USB so that nothing can be stored on the USB, and it automatically logs you in. So you don't have to put in a password or a login to get in there. But when you put it in forensic mode, you're saying, oh, okay, this is serious. And the reason you cannot store anything on the USB is in case you were doing a forensic investigation on something that was infected with ransomware or malware. The intent there is the ransomware or malware isn't going to sneak onto your Kali USB and then corrupt your own data, and then you're all wet, you don't have good results, and you look bad, right? So when you're in forensic mode, typically what you want to do is if you want to capture or acquire data, you're going to want to connect another external hard drive while you're in forensic mode so that your Kali will function properly. It won't be corrupted or compromised by a hacker tool so that, your results are reliable, right? You can use persistence. What that means is that you can engage Kali access forensic tools, and with persistence selected or encrypted persistence selected, you can store data from the host machine onto the Kali USB thumb drive. But that's not recommended in most cases. I mean, if you're trying to recover some quick information, let's say you have a laptop that's crashed and somebody goes, oh, I need to save my pictures. You can use this thumb drive, go into USB persistence mode, navigate to their pictures, save their pictures on the Kali thumb drive, and then copy them over onto another machine. So there are tools for Kali for all sorts of things, for data recovery and so on. And you can restore them directly on the USB in that case. But that kind of cybersecurity activity or task is not forensic in nature. And in a forensic mode, you're going to have to prove what you did in a court of law. Is everybody with me here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if you don't give me this screenshot showing that this was selected, you're not going to get credit, not full credit. Okay, but this is what you select for full credit. When you do that, a whole bunch of stuff is going to happen on your screen, and you're going to think, my God, what have I done? Oh, what is this thing doing to my system? And I want to assure you that that's normal. I don't want a screenshot of this. You'll see okay, okay, okay. Every now and then you'll see red, you'll see failed, alert, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about it. What you really care about is the opening screen. Without having a password to enter, it's going to open up your screen, and you're not going to see this menu. You have to click the little dragon icon in the upper left corner. When you do that, you're going to see all of these other tools for exploitation, like Metasploit, for SQL, for database capture, right? For SQL injection, for password attacks, for wireless exploits, right? For sniffing and spoofing. This is basically designed for ethical hackers to use to test to make sure that people don't have all their stuff exposed. The problem with this is all of these tools are in the mix, and the moment Kali shows up on an enterprise network as active, the moment a connected machine shows Kali is running, it's gonna alert, it's gonna alarm. And there are people in the tech department, they're gonna sit up in their chairs and go, okay, who's doing what? Which is why we're going to take the time to also validate ethical use. I'm going to give you a form and you're going to read it. And this is not an optional assignment, but since we're using Kali and we want you to use what? Just the forensics here, number 11. Do we want you to use all these other Kali tools at your home, on the campus, when you're connected to other wireless networks? No. No. When we have our ethical hacking course, we'll be using those other tools, okay? If you're in the system security course, we'll be using some of these tools to test our system security, right? But we don't want you, we want you to validate that you understand you're using the forensic tools only, and that you abide to the ethical use of these tools. That is a requirement of this module. And even though it's only worth 1 point, even though this assignment is only worth 1 point, I want everyone to cue up your mic one at a time and say you understand. If you don't validate ethical use of the Kali we're about to do, you should probably withdraw from the course.
All right, I understand.
Okay. All right, that's one down. Next.
Yeah,
I understand.
I understand.
Cool. Now, if you need to, if you need to withdraw from the course because you don't want to sign off on a validation of ethical use, just send me an email and say, you never explained up front when I was taking this course that I'd have to sign something that I have to use the Kali for good. I don't like that. I want my options open. It's time for us to part company. You can send me an email and we'll sort it out. But when does that due? That's due by 9 a.m. Thursday. This Thursday, 9 a.m. by the start of the next class, okay? Now you have until 11:59 p.m. Saturday to finish the solution and to finish your first attempt at the assessment. And then by 9 a.m. Tuesday, you're going to finish the reconciliation of that assessment and the retake. And you're like, what? How are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to at 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, I'm going to do an item analysis of the assessment items and post that recording out on Blackboard. You'll have reference to that to reconcile and before you retake. So our timeline is tighter, but that allows us from the end of class on Tuesday, right? We're going to review things on Tuesday to see if anybody has any questions about anything in Module 1. I'm also going to post the Module 1 retake out there over the weekend, so you can retake your Module 1 assessment in preparation for the midterm. Midterm exam will include everything that you've seen on the Module 1 assessments and the Module 2 assessments. And so we'll have from the end of class on Tuesday through 11:59 p.m. Wednesday, the following day, to engage a 90-minute midterm exam. Are there any questions or concerns about this timeline? If you look at your calendar and you find out that you're too jammed up with work or you have other assignments that are due, I want you to send me an email. But I really think this is doable. especially if you get everything you need. We already have a recording of the step-by-step to create the live USB for your solution. And that's going to be in the resources folder as soon as we're finished uploading the study guide and all that, right? What I'd like to demonstrate for you now is the second option for your solution. So if you don't have a 16 gig thumb drive, right? And you're not in a place where it's convenient or possible for you to get to a store and buy one, 16 gig USB 3.0 drive in Kmart or in SuperDollar or in, I don't know, a computer store or an Office Max. Where else can you get it on island? You could order it on Amazon and get it in 2 days, maybe, depending. Some people have better luck with that than others. We're talking about a $15 purchase, maybe, at the most, about $1 a gigabyte. If you don't want to do that, you have a second option to complete the solution. And that second option is to download the virtual appliance for Kali, which is it's on another link on the Kali website. If you want the virtual appliance, then it takes you to an offensive security website where you download the 64-bit. There's a different one for Macs as opposed to Windows. This is for the Windows environment, but this is really easy to set up, and everything that you need to do for the remaining course modules can be done with the VirtualBox machine. You can simulate the use. Let me say that again. You can simulate the use of a USB by creating a VHD, a virtual hard disk. And so you don't need the live USB to finish the rest of the course assignments. You can use the virtual appliance if you prefer to do that instead, and you just don't want to buy a USB drive. Are there any questions before I demonstrate how to create? I'm going to do this now. I'll create the appliance right before your eyes. And the time remaining. Going once.
Does a flash drive need to be 16 gigs?
That's a great question. It can be larger. You could actually do it with 8 gigs. I'm pretty sure you could pull it off with 8 gigs. But sometimes you run into errors because it does things with memory management, and it might fuss that it needs more. I've been trying some things lately with live USB distributions, and half the time the 8 gig doesn't cut it. So if you do it with an 8 gig, that's fine, and it works as long as it works.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, why am I showing you this last screen? I showed you all of the neat, nasty tools and how you would need to certify your ethical use of Kali before we finished our module. This is the screen you need to turn in for remaining credit if you do the live USB option for the solution. You're going to select item 11 from the menu, and then these other menu items are going to appear, and I want you to click open 3 of them: the carving tools, the imaging tools, and the sleuth kit suite. I want you to show these explicitly. And then you capture this screen either with your smartphone, or there's actually a screen capture image on here, and you can grab it with another thumb drive and take it off of there. That's pretty cool. So you can do screenshots within Kali where you don't have to use your phone, and then you have a very large graphics file that's a pain in the neck to work with. But anyway, this is the finish line of the solution for full credit, unless you're doing the appliance. Any questions about this last criteria right here? Okay. So if you've already installed Oracle VirtualBox and you have the extensions, You want to make sure that you have, if you're going to do the virtual appliance, you absolutely want to make sure that you're running the latest version of VirtualBox, which is 6.1.18. That came out about a month ago. So if you've had VirtualBox loaded on your system for longer than a month, it's possible it's not the latest one. The reason that's important is that there are a lot of things that have been fixed and improved. In addition to this, you want to load the extensions, the same version of extensions. So if I go to virtualbox.org, and I go to download VirtualBox. If you're running a Mac, you can download the OS X host. If you're running Windows, you can do this at 6.1.18. After you download this and install it, you also need to install the extension pack before you import the appliance file. So if you click this link, it's for all supported platforms, Mac, Windows, Linux. Just click this. It'll download the extension pack. You double click it to load it. And if VirtualBox 6.1.18 is already installed, it'll know what to do from there. Any questions about the VirtualBox preparation?
No questions.
Okay, I did say that you need 30 gigs of free hard drive space, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're running low on hard drive space, you're better off going the USB route. But if you have plenty of hard drive space and you just don't want to get the USB, then that's cool too. What you're going to do is you're going to create a new machine, but instead of using, let's maximize this and get rid of our menus. Instead of creating a new machine, so if I'd selected tools, I'd have the new option. I'm not going to create a new machine. I'm going to import an appliance. Once again, I'm not creating a new machine with the OVA file I download. The OVA file is, by the way, there is a hash for this also. So you're going to want to hash your download and provide the hash for your download. It is a 3 point something gig file. It's probably about 3.5 gig file. It's a 3.5 gig file. And when you import it, it's going to expand. So I'm going to import the appliance, and I'm going to go to my folder where it's stored. In this case, I put in a temp folder. And I'm going to go ahead and say next. And the one change I'm going to make, this most important change I'm going to make, this change you do not want to miss, is that you're going to generate new MAC addresses for all network adapters. You will not accept the default MAC address policy, but you need to change it to generate new MAC addresses for all network adapters. You want your Kali virtual machine to have a different presence and identity when it's operating on the network. You do not want it to duplicate MAC addresses. That would be evil. And leaving that setting the way it is, in its default, would be like signaling that, oh, you're not really serious about doing what's right and good about it. You intend to do something evil, right? Remember those automatic alarms that go off in corporate settings, in mid-size and larger organizations? This is one way you ignore that debacle, right? Don't participate in the train wreck when that's needless, right? So you want it to have its own unique MAC address, and that's going to be important. You'll record that as a part of an investigation record so that people know that this was a legitimately configured tool suite. I'm going to click import. It's going to say the virtual blah, blah, blah requires that you agree to the terms and conditions of the software license shown. I'm going to say agree. And away you go. Now, the cool part of this is going to run. And it's only going to take, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes. And then when it's over with, you can start this thing up and you can get the screen that you need to capture. And we're going to do that hopefully in less than 10 minutes. It is going to expand to more, very much more. See how that changes. So now it's down to a minute. I have a solid state hard drive on my laptop, so it's going to do the same thing with yours. If you receive any error messages on your screen, grab the screenshot and email it to me. When does this do, everyone? Either the USB creation or the virtual appliance creation is due by when?
This Saturday.
This Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Yep. Okay. Yeah, it's moving right along. It's nice. And you'll get a chance to see what kind of footprint it takes up on my machine. I was about to pull up the study guide and see if we can look at a couple more things real quick. So one of the things that you're going to see as a reference along with the study guide is this matrix. It's a breakout of the forensic tools and when and for what purpose they're used. So one of the things we want you to be able to do is to identify, and the best way to do that is to just reference the matrix, right? There's a lot of tools. We don't expect you to memorize them, but we want you to be able to, given a forensic scenario, the stage of investigation, oh, we're doing acquisition, oh, we're doing analysis, right? And the context, oh, we've got a hacker who's sniffing on the network. What's the forensic tool and method suitable for the task? I'm going to use Wireshark. I want to catch the hacker while he's messing around on that system, and I'm going to check the logs in the SIEM, which will also include my intrusion detection system and other system and network logs from other clients. So you'll be able to see that kind of thing from the, yeah. And then explaining the pros and cons of using a live Linux distribution kind of ties in with what we were just talking about. If you use a live Linux distribution and it's a corporate environment, one of the cons is that the corporation may have policies against hacking tools that you need to work or coordinate a formal record of acceptance, right? The pros are if you're using the same tools the bad guys are, you have a good chance of catching them doing what they're doing. All right, so here we go. Our Kali Linux machine is done. Are there any other, oh, that's not where we are. Anything else going on? No, it just finished, just completed and closed. I can go ahead and load this now. I will tell you that if you ever, this is useful information. When you start a virtual machine, you should, as a general practice, use detachable start instead of normal start. If you just click on start, it'll run. But if you're on a laptop that's running on battery, you don't have your power supply. If your battery starts to shift into power save states because you're juggling tasks. So now you're getting ready for a class on Blackboard. Gosh, it starts at 11 o'clock. And so you're juggling some things. If some of those screens start to go into power save mode, your virtual machine is going to sputter and misfire. In order to avoid that scenario, or if you switch user, right? So if you go here and you're like, oh, I need to use your screen. So you're going to let somebody switch and you do switch user. That'll kill whatever's running in this Kali machine. And so there are all sorts of issues that come up. I urge you to use detachable start. It's going to go ahead and run. Everybody's mileage is going to vary depending on the hardware that you have locally, but I'm going to accept Kali. There is an advanced options for Kali, and you can select that one, but if you just let it load, it's going to blink. You're going to see some errors, but then ultimately, the advantage of having an appliance is that it's designed to run on 57,000 types and brands and models of PCs and laptops and so on. When you create an appliance, you're saying, hey, I want this to run on a variety of stuff. You'll notice here that you do have to put in a password and a login, unlike the live USB, right? And the password, the login is Kali, and the password is the same. Kali, right? I'm going to maximize the screen. I'm going to click here. I'm going to avoid engaging the other plethora of nasty tools that are listed there, which is only going to like tickle your curiosity to the point where some of you are going to be like, hey, I'm going to try this at home. And that's cool. You can do things at home if you want, but the point for our course is everybody knows this is what we're doing. I'm going to click on forensics so that the menus stick, and then I'm going to open up carving tools, imaging tools, and sleuth kit suite. Autopsy is really cool. It's part of the sleuth kit. We'll be using autopsy. We'll be using this imaging tool. We'll be using other tools. PDFs are containers. You can basically stuff all kinds of malware inside PDFs or hide other data inside PDFs. Ever notice how some PDFs are really large? Bad people do that kind of thing. Anyway, yeah, you don't have to open that one up, but I want this displayed. I want you to capture this screen. If you don't care to use the screen capture option inside Kali, one easy way to do this is to resize your window so that it's most of your screen. And then hit this little slim button in the lower right corner so that everything is minimized. And then redisplay this. Click on your desktop outside the window. Click on your desktop and then just hit print screen. And then when you go into Paint and you do like this, you can paste it. And there you have it. A little bit of desktop showing, but so what? It's 10:17. We want to do a better job of closing closer to the end, you know, the proper end of our class, like we said we would. So are there any questions before we close and end our class today? This is what you'd have to turn in for full credit if you do the appliance version. Any questions? I had 35 gigs before. I have almost 25 gigs now. The Kali appliance took up 10 gigs of hard drive space. It's always good not to max out everything. That's why I said make sure you have about 30 gigs of free space. Do you want some additional space left after you do this? You don't want to take
I
up.
have an old terabyte hard drive. Would that work?
That's a great question. If it's directly connected to your machine, yes. If it's connected through a USB 3.0 external interface, yes. if it's an older external hard drive that uses USB 2.0, it will take you 15 minutes to load Kali. I mean, just to start Kali, just to pull it up, creating the thing, building the appliance. There's a lot of data going back and forth. As long as you don't mind sitting there, you can use it. It's not a problem.
All right.
Good question. It all depends on your own level of pain, you know. Is everybody else good?
College.
Or is everybody else good today? Are there any questions, or does anyone want me to hang on before we is there anyone that wants to speak to me directly on the sidelines, so I should stay in the session?
Nah, everything's cool. Nothing's on fire yet.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good news. All right. So this concludes our class today. So yeah, we're getting better. We're closing within 4 minutes of the end of class mark. I'll take it. It's better than yesterday. We had another internet service outage yesterday, so I'm going to be teaching from campus until my internet service is set up. We're still working on it. Takes a while.
Oh, yeah.
Takes a while. Yeah.
We love Via.
Yeah. So Via is good. People who have Via like Via?
No.
Meh.
No.
No, how about
Via is
broadband VI? Or with people that have broadband VI, are you happy with broadband VI?
Nope.
No.
Service providers down here are rough, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, part of that has to do with, so the young man that was installing this thing for me yesterday was up on the roof. And I'm just salivating, thinking, oh, I'm going to have much faster, quicker internet soon, right? It's like I'm ready to have filet mignon. I'm just so jazzed about having better service. He gets up on the roof, and then he comes down, and I ask him which cable he's using. He had every basic question most of you learn in 243, CSC 243, incorrect. Right? It was like,
Oh,
You
that's not
said
good.
basic questions,
yeah, oh man, no, that's the wrong kind of cable to use for this. You're not supposed to use this kind of cable for that. No, dude.
That's not good.
You're not supposed to terminate to this kind of hardware. You're supposed to terminate to the other kinds of hardware. He's like, what are you talking about? I said, how long have you been working? A year. Oh, okay. So do they like spend a month training you or something? He's like, no, I just learned on the job. I just followed other people. Right. So I had a chance to share with him about what we were doing. Now, he was very skilled at the things he was doing, and I was impressed. He broke the speed record for punching a hole through a heavy concrete wall, and he seemed very eager to learn more. I saw a lot of raw potential and talent there. So I was, I was excited that much about it, but I kept thinking, okay, he hasn't really had any formal training. So, and some of the stuff they're doing isn't what the manufacturer specifies for the connections. So if you're having bad service, it's that physical layer, right? Physical layer, physical layer, physical layer. And yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off then. And I hope everyone has a good day.
You as well, Professor.
And keep your eyes peeled. I'll send the study guide in an email to everyone in just a little bit here, noon today. And let me know if you run into any snags on the solution. That's it.
All right.